Hi everyone, Amy here with Amy's Wares, and I'm going to show you an idea to foil with your stamps without using a fancy machine or a hot foiling system. So here is what we're going to use today. This is sticky embossing powder. Now honestly, I've had this for a while. I played with it a couple times, didn't really know what I was doing, and then set it aside. But someone recently asked about using some foiling without a hot foiling system, so this is for you. So I have this gorgeous floral stamp set from Concord and Ninth, and I have these panels that I cut down from A2 size with these wonky stitched dies from My Favorite Things. And here's a picture of the two cards that I'm going to make for you today. So these are using foil and these products, and I'm not using a laminator and I'm not using a hot foiling system. So first off, I'm going to load this panel into my MISTI, and I'm going to use my embossing tool. This is from the Rabbit Hole Designs. Now this lays down a little powder on your card so that your embossing powder will stick only where you want it to with the stamping and not in the other parts of the panel. So I'm just going to layer this liberally with some embossing ink. So I use Versamark clear embossing ink, and I'm just going to stamp this a couple times just to make sure I have a really good impression. Also make sure it's nestled into the corner of the MISTI so that there's no double stamping or messing up the image. And then I'm going to lay a scratch piece of paper down and then coat it with this sticky embossing, I already forgot the name of it, this embossing powder. So basically, I think I've heard before that it's actually like a glue that's kind of turned into powder form. So this is a little bit different in terms of melting it. You still want to use a heat tool, but you don't want to spend extra time heating it up. You want to just melt it and then move on. You don't want it to, get really hot. So as soon as it turns to clear, sticky, then move on and don't overdo it. So you won't even be able to see it here as I melt it, but it does basically kind of turn it into a glue of sorts. And this is what's going to allow that foil to kind of take the design of the stamp. Now, when I played with it before, I think I ran it through my laminator, but this I thought, I'm going to run it through my embossing machine or my die cutting machine and see if pressure will be all that it takes. Because essentially, if you have the glue down, that's what's going to grab onto the foil. So really just using the pressure of your embossing machine should work. But guys, I seriously, like I said, I have not played with that powder probably since I bought it, and I had no idea if this was going to work. I'm sure there's other videos out there about this procedure, but it's been so long, I just thought, I'm just going to go for it. So here I'm running it through my spellbinders. I just have the two regular plates in the base, and I'm running it through a couple times just to give it some pressure, just hoping, fingers crossed, that it took my design. So I'm just going to kind of pull it out here, get my embossing machine out of the way, and then I'm going to carefully pull back this foil for you, and it worked for the most part. I mean, it's not the cleanest. You may get a better impression doing it a different way, but for this method, I thought it worked really well. I mean, not even having to use a laminator. So this is the first panel that I'm going to make for you. I'm going to use a different floral and try it with a different foil, but basically overall this worked pretty well. And then you have this gorgeous, leftover piece that you could use on some toner paper with a laminator or a Mink if you have one, and create a second card with that. So hang on to that extra leftover foil. Now this is Weekend Doodles. This is one of my favorite floral sets. You can see it's pretty well loved, and this is from Altenew. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I laid down that embossing powder with my embossing tool, and I'm stamping it with embossing ink. So get a nice coating of Versamark, dump this powder all over, make a mess. Again, trying to pour back in. Just a note, when you do pour it back in, for some reason it gets, I don't know, like fluffier, and it kind of fills up, seems to take up more space than it did when it was originally in the jar. So I don't know if it settles down and then kind of fluffs up when you pour it back in. So just bear that in mind, and be extra careful when you're pouring it back in the jar. And I do believe there's other brands of that. Like I said, mine is that Ranger brand, but I think there's some other brands of the same concept with this sort of glue. And I did run that through my embossing machine off screen, and again you can see a couple little spots. I do have an embossing foiling, or rather a foil glue pen that I think if I was really bothered by those little spots where it missed the foil, you could kind of hand draw that in and let the glue dry and then kind of just press the foil down onto it and see if you could get it to take that design. So totally up to you. I'm pleased enough with how they turned out. But here, somebody had asked me about foil die cuts as well. And I'm not sure exactly if this is what they meant, but this is my answer to it. So I took a piece of lighter weight cardstock. This was 80 pound Nina rather than the 110 pound that I did the foiling on. But I just laid some of this scrapbook double-sided adhesive across the whole panel. And then I'm going to peel it back and then lay down the same color foil and then basically create a panel that I can die cut from. So I'm just folding back that backer sheet and laying down the blue first, kind of trying to get out the air bubbles and just really pushing that down. And I have this, I don't even know what it's called. I use it for like putting glitter gel and stuff through stencils, but I'm using that just to kind of squeegee it, if you will, and kind of get it nice and flat on the paper. And then I am going to cut it apart just because I don't want my messy embossing panels to kind of mar the foil any more than it needs to. But I'm just running those off screen through the die cutting machine, pulling out the little bits and bobs, and then I'm going to have the exact perfect match of the foil in this die cut, which is from Hero Arts. So here I decide I want to go next level, and I take this adhesive backed foam, excuse me, I'm kind of frog in my throat, and I'm gonna just cut 2 more of these just to give those foil die cuts some nice popped up dimension on the card, just to give it a little something else. And I chose this green because I felt like it would go both with the purple and with the blue. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to attach it. So this first way, you can pop out your die cut, lay down your liquid glue on top, and then just attach it right to the actual, cutout, or you can do it this way and then just lay down the liquid glue right where it's still being held by the rest of the foam sheet, and then just kind of leave it in place there until it dries a little bit and then pop it out. So both ways work. You do you, whichever way works for you. But I find that both ways work depending on how fussy and how hard the die cut is to get out may determine what way is easier for you. But this is a nice fun way to kind of turn your die cut into a sticker and then give it nice even dimension without having to mess with little fiddly foam bits. So another step here that I almost forgot, because we're really just kind of die cutting right into the foil. There is a clear sheet that you would normally pull back when you're foiling. So I did end up pulling that off. And you'll see that in just a moment here. But here's the backer coming off of the foam sheet, and then that's what basically makes it adhere right to your card. You don't even need to use glue. You can, but I found that they stick really well and don't come off. So I haven't had any issues there. I love the convenience of it, and I love the nice even dimensions, so I know that it's going to hold up better in the mail and not get crushed down or have any little saggy spots. So I'm just going to attach that on the composition, and then here is where I realized, like, oh yeah, there's the little clear bit on the top that you got to pull off. So carefully pull that off, and then that's going to finish the design. So I hope you enjoyed this easy way to use some foil without a heat laminator or a hot foiling system. Hope this gives you some ideas to use your stamp. I would imagine stamps with a little bit of a thicker line weight might work a little bit better, but just experiment and play and see what works for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel, and I'll check you next time. Thank you. Bye.